Have you ever perfectly mirrored a client's body language?
Or matched their exact speaking pace.
Right. Built what felt like unbreakable rapport, and then watched them sign a massive contract with your biggest competitor.
It is an incredibly frustrating experience.
It really is. You do everything the classic sales training seminars tell you to do, and the deal still slips away. In the next few minutes, we are breaking down the research into 3 sales tactics that will increase your sales.
This is Inside Sales Geek, where we translate academic sales research into practical strategies that actually work.
So we are looking at a really fascinating piece of academic research out of Taiwan.
Yeah.
And it examines the daily lives of 288 sales professionals. But these aren't just any sales professionals. They're operating in one of the most volatile, high-stakes environments on the planet.
The international maritime logistics industry.
Exactly.
And that specific context it's vital to keep in mind as we go through this. We aren't talking about selling software in a relaxed, climate-controlled office,
Right, where a delayed email is the biggest crisis of your day.
Exactly. In Taiwan, over 99% of international cargo moves via maritime logistics. Essentially, everything goes by sea.
Wow.
And if you look at what this industry has endured recently, it is staggering. The research highlights that the global contract logistics market shrank by 3.3% in 2020.
Because of the pandemic.
Right, because of the pandemic. But then it violently rebounded. They are forecasting a compound annual growth rate of 5.7% from 2022 to 2027.
So you have this massive whiplash.
Huge whiplash.
You've got supply chain uncertainties, extreme fluctuations in supply and demand, limited stowage space on these massive cargo ships, and chronic port delays.
It's a pressure cooker.
It is. You are dealing with angry clients whose entire businesses are threatened because their inventory is stuck halfway across the world. And what this study does is map out exactly what separates the top performers from everyone else in that intense environment.
And they used a very specific method for this.
Right. The researchers use something called structural equation modeling.
Which sounds incredibly dense.
It does. It sounds like a math textbook.
Here's what surprised me about this research, though. The way they use this modeling. Think of structural equation modeling like a massive, invisible spider web.
Okay.
Instead of just looking at a simple cause and effect, like whether trait A causes result B, it maps an entire ecosystem.
So it's not just a straight line.
Exactly. It looks at how trait A affects behavior B, which secretly triggers variable C, which then loops back around to influence the final outcome.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it allows us to see the entire psychological chain reaction happening inside a salesperson's brain during a high-stress negotiation.
That is wild.
So our goal today is to extract the 3 core tactics from that data. We are going to translate that complex academic web into practical strategies you and your team can use to increase your own sales.
Whether you are dealing in global shipping logistics, enterprise software, or just trying to get a better outcome in your next client meeting. Let's get right into the first tactic.
Let's do it.
The researchers identify this as the absolute foundation of everything else in the sales process. And it's emotional regulation.
Right.
Now, I know emotional regulation is a massive buzzword right now. You see it in every leadership article and self-help book. But what does it functionally mean in a high-stress, quota-driven business context?
People often misinterpret emotional regulation. They think it just means taking a deep breath when you are angry.
Right, or pasting a fake smile on your face when a client is screaming at you.
Exactly. But the framework used in this research breaks it down into 2 highly strategic, distinct phases. It is far more proactive than just calming down.
Okay.
The first phase is what they call antecedent-focused emotional regulation.
Antecedent meaning before the event happens.
Exactly that. This happens before the negative emotions are fully engaged. It involves situational selection and modification.
So what does that look like on a Tuesday morning?
Essentially, it is reading the room and altering the environment to prevent an emotional explosion in the first place. You might walk into a meeting, notice a client's tense body language or agitated tone, and instantly decide to scrap your plan pitch.
You just pivot.
You shift the dynamic. You change the agenda on the fly and modify the situation before anyone gets genuinely upset. You are managing the emotional landscape before the fire even starts.
But in the real world, especially in a volatile industry like logistics, you can't always prevent the fire.
No, you can't.
Sometimes you just pick up the phone and the client is already screaming.
And that is where the second phase comes in. This is response-focused emotional regulation.
Response focus.
Right. This is what happens after things get heated. It relies heavily on something called cognitive reappraisal.
Cognitive reappraisal. Let's define that.
It means actively reconsidering the situation in real time to find an appropriate emotional response. And that is combined with suppression, which is actively reducing your own negative physical expressions.
Okay, let's ground this in a specific scenario from the research. Imagine you are a maritime salesperson.
Okay.
You get a call from a client who is absolutely furious. Their cargo containers are stuck at a port in Rotterdam.
A nightmare scenario.
A total nightmare. They are losing tens of thousands of dollars by the hour. Their own customers are threatening to cancel orders, and this client is taking all of that panic out on you.
Right.
If you lack emotional regulation, your natural biological instinct is to get defensive. You want to yell back, "It is not my fault. The entire port is backed up. I don't control the cranes."
Of course you do. That's human nature.
Or, alternatively, you might just freeze up and shut down entirely.
And if you react defensively in that moment, the relationship sustains severe damage. But more importantly, the underlying problem remains completely unsolved.
Yeah.
The study explicitly points out that a salesperson must remain cool-headed to untangle these complex issues. If you utilize response-focused emotional regulation, you can actively suppress your own urge to fight back.
You literally suppress the physical urge to yell.
Yes, you use cognitive reappraisal to realize this client isn't actually attacking me personally. They are terrified of their own business collapsing.
You reframe it.
You reframe their anger as panic, and that keeps your own mind clear enough to actually work the problem.
So why is this the foundation? Why does the data show this is step one? Because you literally cannot help a customer if you are drowning in your own emotional response.
Exactly.
The structural equation modeling proved that emotional regulation positively impacts both how well you adapt to a customer and how much you actually care about their functional needs.
It's the prerequisite.
If your brain is flooded with cortisol because you are panicking or angry, you simply do not have the cognitive bandwidth to be strategic. You have to secure your own emotional oxygen mask first before you can influence the external situation.
That is a great way to put it. And once you have that baseline of emotional control, the data shows you can move to the next crucial step in the sales process.
Quick pause. If you're finding this valuable, hit subscribe so you don't miss next week's episode. And share this with your sales team.
Now here's where it gets interesting, because this next finding completely contradicts standard sales advice.
It really does.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time looking at this next data point, and I actually had to read it twice.
Yeah, the researchers went into this study with a core hypothesis. They assumed that adaptive selling would directly improve sales performance.
Let's define adaptive selling real quick.
It's flexibly changing your presentation style, your tone, and your approach to fit the specific customer you are talking to.
Right. So they assumed that the more you adapt to the client, the more market share you gain and the more you exceed your targets.
Which sounds completely logical. It is the core philosophy taught in almost every fundamental sales training seminar around the world.
Be a chameleon.
Be a chameleon. If the client speaks quickly, you speed up. If they are highly analytical and reserved, you dial back the enthusiasm and slide them a spreadsheet. Match and mirror to build rapport.
Right. But the data showed it didn't work.
It did not.
The researchers tested this direct link, and their hypothesis was explicitly not supported.
The statistical effect of adaptive selling directly on sales performance was negative 0.01.
Negative 0.01. It was essentially a flat zero.
A flat zero. Just adapting your personality to the client had absolutely no direct impact on actually closing the deal or performing better.
Wait, let's pause there. Are you saying all those classic sales seminars that tell you to match and mirror your client are wrong? Because that feels incredibly counterintuitive.
It's not that matching and mirroring are inherently wrong. It's that they are wildly insufficient on their own.
Okay.
The answer the data provides is that being a chameleon is at best superficial and at worst perceived as manipulative if the interaction stops there.
That makes sense.
Think about the high-stakes environment these logistics professionals operate in. Customers with millions of dollars of cargo on the line can see right through artificial rapport.
They don't care if you like the same sports team.
Exactly. They don't just want a salesperson who acts like them or politely agrees with them. They want someone who can actually fix their highly complex supply chain problems.
Right.
The research proves that adaptive selling only works if it acts as a bridge. It cannot be the destination.
This next part is crucial.
It must be a bridge to something called customer-oriented behavior, or COB.
We need to break down QOB because this is clearly the magic ingredient that the chameleon salespeople are missing.
Yeah.
What exactly constitutes customer-oriented behavior in this context?
Customer-oriented behavior is defined as putting the customer's interests first, but it is a highly actionable operational state.
Okay.
It requires two distinct sets of skills to work in tandem. First, you need technical skills.
Hard knowledge.
Yes, the actual hard knowledge, experience, and competency required to meet the customer's functional needs. You need to know your product inside and out.
And the second?
Second, you need social skills. The ability to genuinely understand their thoughts and feelings. COB means you are heavily invested in uncovering their specific pain points and creating tangible structural value to solve them.
Let's contrast those two things using our maritime logistics scenario. Let's say a customer's shipping needs suddenly change due to a factory delay.
Okay.
Adaptive selling is noticing the customer is stressed and consciously lowering your voice to speak to them in a calm, reassuring tone. You are matching their need for stability.
Right.
That is great for rapport, but a calm tone does not move a 20-ton shipping container.
It definitely doesn't.
Customer-oriented behavior, on the other hand, is taking the time to understand exactly why that delay ruins their quarter, and then using your deep technical knowledge of the shipping lanes to change a destination midway.
Exactly.
It's knowing how to adjust the stowage plan on the fly, or leveraging your contacts to speed up customs clearance in a different port. It is about tailoring the actual solution, not just tailoring your personality.
And that distinction is exactly what the math revealed. The study found that adaptive selling has a massive positive impact on customer-oriented behavior.
Okay, so they do connect.
They do connect. So you use your adaptability to get on the same wavelength as the client, which builds the trust required for them to open up about the real complexities of their problem.
Then you transition.
Then you transition into customer-oriented behavior to actually engineer the solution. And that specific behavior, the technical problem solving, the customer-first action, is what directly drives sales performance.
Because rapport without operational competency is just a pleasant conversation.
The client needs a logistics partner, not a pen pal.
If you are evaluating your own performance or coaching your team, this requires a fundamental shift in perspective. Being liked is a byproduct, not a strategy.
That's entirely true.
You adapt to uncover their specific painful problem, and then you apply your technical expertise to fix it. If you are a brilliant conversationalist, but you don't actually know the intricate details of the software you are selling, or you aren't willing to do the grueling internal work of restructuring a contract to benefit the client, you are going to lose the deal to the person who will.
Absolutely.
But here's the catch. We've talked about emotional regulation, and we've talked about using adaptive selling as a bridge to customer-oriented behavior. But the research points out that none of this works at the highest level if you lack one very specific trait.
The secret multiplier.
Yes, this third concept acts as a secret multiplier for everything else.
The researchers identified a variable called job resourcefulness, and the way they define it is incredibly compelling for anyone in the modern business world.
Let's hear it.
Job resourcefulness is the ability to garner scarce resources and overcome obstacles in your job-related tasks. It is the capacity to be clever, inventive, and enterprising, specifically when your organization's resources are severely limited.
It is the MacGyver trait.
Precisely. It is fundamentally tied to two broader personality characteristics. The first is conscientiousness.
Drive and persistence.
Right, your drive and internal motivation to see a task through. The second is openness to experience, which involves creativity, curiosity, and the cognitive flexibility to imagine alternative solutions when the standard operating procedure fails.
This is so relevant because, honestly, when do we ever operate with unlimited resources?
Never.
The answer is never. In the logistics study, these salespeople are operating in an environment where cargo space on ships is strictly limited, time is always running out, and profit margins are razor thin.
And the findings around this resourceful trait are staggering. First, the data shows that job resourcefulness directly boosts both customer-oriented behavior and sales performance all on its own.
So just having it helps.
Just having this trait makes you measurably better at your job. But the second finding is the real game changer.
You're referring to the moderating effect.
Yes. In structural equation modeling, a moderator is a variable that changes the strength of the relationship between two other variables.
Think of it like a volume dial on an amplifier.
Perfect analogy. The study found that job resourcefulness acts as a massive amplifier for the other skills we discussed. If you have high job resourcefulness, your emotional regulation translates much more powerfully into adaptive selling.
And your adaptive selling translates much more powerfully into customer-oriented behavior.
Exactly. It turns up the volume on everything else you do.
Let's visualize how this actually plays out for your team. A client calls you in an absolute panic. They need a critical shipment of components moved from Taipei to Los Angeles by next Tuesday.
Very tight timeline.
But your company's vessels are booked completely solid. The system shows zero capacity. A salesperson with low job resourcefulness hits that wall and stops. They might have incredible emotional regulation. They stay perfectly calm while the client panics. They might be highly adaptive. They empathize deeply with the client's stress. They might even be customer-oriented and spirit-passionate. They genuinely want to help.
But they look at the computer screen, see zero capacity, and politely say, "I am so sorry, my hands are tied. There's nothing I can do."
Because they are relying solely on the standard resources provided by the organization.
But a highly resourceful salesperson looks at that exact same wall and starts searching for a window.
They refuse to accept the zero capacity on the main vessel as the final answer.
They start working their informal networks. They call a contact at a regional feeder ship. They piece together a highly complex multimodal transport plan.
Like trucking the cargo to a different port entirely.
Right, putting it on a smaller vessel to a secondary hub, and then squeezing it onto a specialized rail line once it hits the coast.
They bend the existing infrastructure, call in favors, and create a solution out of thin air.
When you combine the ability to keep your cool under fire with the empathy to adapt to the customer, and then add in this clever inventiveness to overcome scarcity,
your performance absolutely skyrockets.
Yeah.
To the client, you aren't just a nice salesperson anymore. You are a miracle worker. They will never leave you for a competitor who just has a slick pitch.
This has profound implications for leadership and hiring. We often index heavily on eloquence, polished presentation skills, or years of industry experience when evaluating sales talent.
Yeah, we look for the smooth talkers.
But this data strongly suggests your team should be looking very closely at how someone operates under conditions of extreme scarcity. When the standard operating procedure breaks down, do they throw their hands up or do they get creative?
If you are interviewing someone, you need to ask questions like, walk me through a time you had to deliver a critical result when you had absolutely no budget, no timeline, and no support.
You are looking for that spark of inventiveness. Because in a volatile market, resourcefulness isn't a nice-to-have secondary trait. It is the multiplier that turns good sales behaviors into outstanding market-dominating performance.
It really is about shifting your entire mindset from being a pleasant conversationalist to being a vital, irreplaceable problem solver for your clients.
Absolutely.
Let's recap the 3 tactics you can implement tomorrow. First, secure your own emotional baseline through emotional regulation so you can actually think clearly under fire. Second, use adaptive selling simply as a bridge to customer-oriented behavior, applying your hard technical skills to solve their specific problems. And third, flex your job resourcefulness by finding inventive workarounds when standard resources fall short. Pick one to test with your team this week. Track your results. Then implement the next one. This has been Inside Sales Geek, translating academic research into wins for your team. New episode every Tuesday.
And that brings up a fascinating final thought for you to consider as you analyze your own company.
We've seen today that job resourcefulness, the specific ability to bend the rules, leverage informal networks, and find creative solutions when resources are scarce, is a massive driver of sales performance.
It makes you wonder,
do highly rigid bureaucratic corporate environments actually kill their own sales performance by punishing the very inventiveness that this study proves is required to win? Think about the approval processes and red tape in your own workplace. Are they designed to empower your most resourceful problem solvers, or are they designed to slow them down?
Something to think about.
Until next time.